of someone on television. We weren't allowed to do that in the privacy of our home. And I understand that today and appreciate that more than ever. Because when publicly we are careful, but when we're alone with our own people or in our privacy, and we say things about the other, we feed that negative place. So we have to pay attention to that, even in our privacy, even in our own thoughts, to move beyond the us and them, because nothing separates us really except our skin. We all have different ideologies. Even within my own church, we all have different ideologies. So to pay attention to the fact that we are the same. We are not different. We may have different paths. We may pray differently. We may dress differently. We may show up at different places or vote differently. So I appreciate that way that my mother raised us more than ever. The other thing that I think is so important, and I see it happening now, and that is the way that our leaders speak. And again, it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. We need to come from the highest place. Because when we come from the lowest place, we feed the low. We feed evil thoughts. We feed negativity. We make it okay to, oh yeah, I don't like those people, or they're like that. It's not acceptable. And it's happening more and more. And I think that that's a reason why we're seeing more violence and terrorism. Because the message is being put out there that it's okay. It's okay to not like them or those people, or they're different. And so I think we all need to hold each other accountable and to take the highest road possible as much as we can.
First of all, I apologize for being late. Pretty strict around here. I was actually with a patient, so.
I understand.
Yeah. I think everything that I heard was sufficient. I don't need to add anything, except to say that I was very moved when people that I know from this room and these gatherings called me November 11th, and then called after Poe. I do think that expressions in times of crisis are very important, and I think it's important that there are expressions of solidarity when things like this happen, like the attack in Pittsburgh or the attack at the synagogue on Poe. I appreciate people's expressions. I am one that believes that the violence that is put out in the world comes back. It may not come back to the people who committed the violence, but to their political entities it comes back. These are continuing circles where if one nation has been violent towards another nation, they should not be entirely surprised when there's a reaction of violence. I don't know how to exactly make the equation, but it's clear that there's an economy where violent rhetoric, for instance, does have violent rhetoric as its response. I'm not justifying, I'm just simply saying that we observe that, we acknowledge that that is part of what happens. I think that's enough.
Okay, this time, as I ask question, if any of panelists want to ask a question, you're welcome to do that. And when you're shaking your head. For once.
May I respond to
Sure.
the,
I didn't say so much, you're gonna start fighting with me. Go ahead.
I don't know if we'd ever fight too much, that's for sure. I've heard enough of you that I consider you my brother. In psychology, I learned that we don't think our way into a new way of acting, but we act our way into a new way of thinking. And that's in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, my faith. I've seen one thing in commonality with Islam, is that the emphasis on what we do. It's important what you believe, but far more important is what you do. And our actions have an impact upon the way we think. And someone said that one of the real tragedies of war is not that people are killed, but that people kill. And when people are trained to kill, they change. Their personalities change. When people are trained to hate, and when I served in the military, part of my basic training was to hate the enemy, and was to, the first thing you do is depersonalize the enemy to make them seem like nothing, so therefore you don't feel guilt necessarily if you kill them or if you demean them or whatever you do. And we see, you said that it comes back to you. In America today, veterans, 22 veterans every day commit suicide in America today. It's a terrible thing because we have trained them in war and in hate and it changes them and it destroys them morally. And there's some psychologists refer to it as moral, the person is morally destroyed, or I forget the word that's used.
Injury.
Pardon?
Moral injury.
Moral injury. Thank you, that's my wife down there. She's always good at pulling me
I
out.
told you shouldn't go anywhere without her.
And so it comes home, it comes back, it affects us, and that's why we believe that the real, well, in fact, Martin Luther King said that you can't fight hate with hate. I had the quote here in this pile somewhere, but I can't find it, but you can only destroy hate with love. And I think that's why Jesus said, love your enemies. Pray for those who despitefully use you and attack you. That's the way to live, because as you love and as you treat people kindly, that comes back to you. And you have a happier, more fulfilling life. And we see the results out there from all of this, especially our current presidency. We see that they're generating terrible circumstances in America today with the justifying hate, and it has its impact, which is negative.
Thank you. So, since you bring the issue of war, I think that America has a new path since President Bush was our president, and the war started against the countries in the Middle East. And now, unfortunately, we are hearing the issue of the war against Iran. The result of the attack to Afghanistan was Taliban and Al-Qaeda. The result of the attack to Iraq was Daesh and Syria, the same thing. And now we have a new, intention for another war. What do you think that the religious community can prevent that, or it's written because the arm manufacturers are supporting the president and they have the commitment to satisfy them? I started with Salam. He was the one who asked me to ask this question.
Okay, I get the burden. No, I think that's the question of our time. And the way I look at it is either we deal with the problem of war now and speak out against it, or we wait until the bombs are dropped and people are killed and there's a frenzy, and then we all come in and just protest. And we as a religious community should once and for all say no to war. No more war. Not in our name. And there are too many religious groups, especially in the United States, that have blessed war or have been too silent about this problem. And God says in the Quran that people keep fanning the flames of war, and God keeps extinguishing the flames of war. Whereas religion is viewed in the opposite, that religious groups are the ones that are promoting war. It is exactly what Dr. Namazika said. It's special interest groups, it's geopolitics, it's the military-industrial complex. And we should separate ourselves from that. And so we, at the Muslim Public Affairs Council, have put together a group of 50 or more religious leaders telling the State Department and the administration that they cannot use our name for war. That we have to find alternatives to that. And that when it comes to Iran, especially in the case of Iran, there has been a war against Iran since the 1950s, when Mohammad Mossadegh was elected as the leader, and then there was a coup against him, and the Shah was installed as the leader by the CIA. Ever since then, there has been this idea of hegemony in the Gulf that has resulted in other problems. And America has been on this ramp, or at least the perception, that it is at a war against Islam. And this is what Al-Qaeda and ISIS and all the extremist groups use as fuel for their propaganda. They say, America is not against dictatorships and this group. America is at war with Islam. And it comes from this idea of a clash of civilizations that was begun by Bernard Lewis and Samuel Huntington, that Islam is at odds with the West. Islam versus the West is the lie that keeps on giving. Keeps on giving us war, keeps on giving us terrorism, radicalization, ghettoization, alienation, problems with religious groups in America. And we have to find a different model in America. And it has to start here. We can't just come and say, let's break bread together and let's have our kumbaya moments and we're all together, and leave these serious problems alone. Religious communities have to be central in the prevention of the next war, or at least pushing back when the war starts, and we have to start now. We can't wait for the war to begin, and then we come out and speak against it. Because America is on another collision course in the Middle East, and it is denying the Palestinian human rights, and it is denying what is happening throughout the Muslim world, whether in Yemen, or in Syria, or in Myanmar, or among the Uyghurs, or in Kashmir. And so it is, there, at least the perception is that America doesn't care. We, as American Muslims, along with American Jews and American Christians, Americans of all faiths, should change that and say, we Americans care, and we're going to start by speaking out against war because we know it's bad for America, it's bad for religion, to begin with. And I think it is our responsibility to at least begin the movement against war now and not wait for it, before it's too late.
Anybody wants to talk about this issue? So-
Well, I say amen to that. I mean, we're called to be peacemakers. We fall short of that too often. The economy is often fed by militaristic activity. My concern, I'm not quite clear how we do this. People, you know, I grew up during Vietnam, and honestly, I thought, we won't have any war after that. People protested before, around the world, millions of people, before we went into Iraq, and we bombed Iraq. Afghanistan is our longest war in history. I mean, it just goes on. So I am behind you in what you say. We need to act that way. I also feel, and I worked as a social worker at the VA for the past 10 years. I have respect for my veterans. I want to see them heal. But I do think we need to stand up to the military and to that bureaucracy and start setting some limits. And it seems like everyone's afraid to say, you know, maybe we don't need to feed that so much money. If we took a tiny 1%, small percent from the military, from veterans, and we use that towards healthcare and public education and mental health, we would be making the world better. So I am frustrated too with this, but yes, we have to be peacemakers or we will implode. And I often, you know, have heard from growing up, you know, the capitalist will sell the noose that he's hung with. So we have to take a stand, and I think if we take a stand as a religious community, there is a lot of power in that. So I agree with you, to say the least.
To go back to what you just said about it being written, I think war is absolutely written when we stop softening hearts. And I think specifically in the softening of the hearts, like that's mentioned so many times in the Quran, I've lost track, that it's a critical piece, that the harder the heart, that it's literally, it impacts your faith. And one of the verses that's really striking me right now is that it says to the believers to keep heart and pursue peace. But to keep heart and pursue peace, even when you think that the odds are completely against you, because God is still with you. And so it's to really not give up and to really push forward and move forward. And I think of like that one piece of the softening of the heart that we hear so often and yet we completely underestimate. Like we soften each other's hearts not only when we meet each other, when we tell stories that are real stories that we haven't been talking about for a long time. And so, for instance, our high school teenage young leaders, 12 Muslims, 12 Jews, went through the program together, and for their project this year, they decided they wanted to tell the story of Abdul Hussein Sardari, who was the Iranian ambassador to France during World War II. And Abdul Hussein Sardari had a really good friend named Ibrahim Muradi, who was a Jewish man. And one inspired the other, and literally, Sardari saved thousands of Jewish lives, Iranian Jewish lives during World War II because he loved his Jewish friend and because he saw something that he wouldn't have seen otherwise, because of the softening of the hearts between them. And so we can't underestimate one friendship, because one friendship can matter so much to so many. And I think of just a few weeks ago when I spoke, I went with our high school students And they did a screening of it's a short film, it's 5 minutes long. You can watch it on our Facebook channel. They did a screening of the film to a young professional Jewish Iranian group. And so as we were watching the film, there was kind of like the film stopped, and at that moment it stopped, and it was a picture of Iranian Jews who were in France during World War II. And one of the individuals in the audience looked at the picture and pointed, and he said, "That's my great-great-great-grandfather." And I don't know if Sardari saved his life, but I do know that he was there and that he felt a deep impact that night. And so you never know the
What's the name
seeds
of
that
the
you'll
movie?
continue.
The movie, what would we look for if we wanted to watch it?
It's called Seeds of Peace, and you'll see it on the New Ground Facebook page. You can find us at MJ New Ground, or just look for the title at MJ New Ground on Facebook. You'll be able to find us in our videos. It's a really short film, and I think those are the types of stories that we need to be telling and sharing, and making sure that people hear.
If there is no comment, I have a special guest here that I really appreciate that she had an early flight to Washington. She came here for this short time to honor us with her speech, Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm deeply honored to be here today. I would like to thank Dr. Namazika for inviting me to this annual Interfaith Festival of Unity. And I commend the Iranian American Muslim Association of North America for choosing to bring people of different faiths together in a festival of unity, brotherhood, and peace. This is not the first time I've been here. I believe Dr. Namazika is a very special human being. He's special because he is committed to peace. It is the only place that I know of where all of the faiths are brought together at any particular time of the year to talk about their faith, their commitment to unity and peace, and to sometimes unveil the real truth about what is going on in America and in the world. I just heard part of your presentation, and I thank you for that. And I have thought for some time that part of the problem in America is our ignorance. We're not taught the geography of the world. We're not taught the various religions of the world. Maybe if you get to college and you're able to choose, you might choose to learn more about the religions of the world, but certainly I don't know any place else that it is taught. And part of the problem is this. We experience it in the Congress of the United States every day. We know a little something about some things. For example, we did get educated on what was possible with Iran and coming up with the peace agreement, which has been undone, by the way, by this president. But when we talk, and various ones talk, they don't know what the alignments are. They don't know, who's aligned with Saudi Arabia, with Iran, with Yemen, with Syria. And so we need some education. We need a lot of education that's going on, and I think one of the things that can be done from religious leadership is carve out a time where there are lessons taught about the way that the Middle East is organized, the geography of it, the alignments, so that people can begin to understand what is at work. And so when you talk about Yemen, for example, many folks, did not relate to what was going on there, the horrific killings and the loss of life and the slaughtering, because they just didn't know anything about Yemen. They just didn't have an understanding of what that was all about. And as we look at what's happening in Syria right today, it is being destroyed day by day. And so we have various politicians at the top of our government that's aligned with Saudi Arabia. And when we see what happened with the journalist that was killed in the most vicious way. Yes, Khashoggi, yes. Everybody should have been just up in arms about that. And instead of being very concerned about it, speaking out about it, saying this cannot happen, we find that excuses were made for what took place. So, I'm not going to get into the weeds on all of this, except to say we are in some very dangerous times in our country. We have a constitutional crisis that is confronting this country. And I know a lot of folks would like to think about what is happening in Washington, as some people don't like each other. It's deeper than that. I mean, this is about public policy. This is about who is making the decisions for our country and why the decisions are being made in the way that they are. We are on the verge of war simply because we have war hawks in our government. Bolton, I don't mind saying it, he would love to have a war with Iran. And let me just say this. If there is a war with Iran, in my limited understanding of what is happening, of course Israel will strike, the United States will strike. I don't know what's going to happen. And I tell you, we cannot sit still while John Bolton is leading our government and this president into that war without being extremely concerned. This is very dangerous for the world. And so I just kind of mention this because I think many of you sitting in the audience know this better than most people. And you understand a lot more about not only the alignments in the Middle East, but the history, which so few Americans really know and understand. But I think it's one thing that you do understand, no matter where you come from, no matter what your religion is, you understand that there's something wrong with the President of the United States of America. I have been around for a long time. I've been an elected official, I've been in politics, I'm 80 years old, but I've never seen anything like this before. And so I started a long time ago, before others even thought about it, to talk about impeachment. I wanted to create a discussion. I wanted people to even be angry with me because they said, well, how can you do that? You just got elected. Well, of course, I learned an awful lot about the President of the United States prior to his election because my staff and I had taken a look at his allies, and we knew about many of his allies, and they all had a little circle that they were involved with the President of the United States and with Russia and with Putin and some of the oligarchs of Russia and the Kremlin. And so when we took a look at the individuals whose names, of course, you all know by now, we thought, why is it this group of people have such a relationship with Russia? And why is it, after the president was inaugurated and elected, why is it he won't speak up for the fact that Russia hacked into our Democratic National Committee, undermining our democracy, undermining our election systems? This is dangerous, folks. And guess what? They're poised to do it for 2020 again. and they were involved, as it was documented by 17 of our intelligence agencies. I mean, this is not something that someone just made up. And of course, it's again in the Mueller report that this happened, and that it can happen again, is happening now, and will happen with the 2020 elections. So I'm just kind of alluding to a few things to piggyback on what I heard just, since I came into the room, about our responsibility to be about peace. Our responsibility to do everything that we can to help educate people, to help people to understand what is at stake, to help people to understand how, as Americans now, American citizens in this country, how we have a responsibility to make sure that the public policy makes good sense and that it's for all of the people. Yes, I am absolutely on record of saying that the President of the United States is dangerous. I'm absolutely on record of saying that I think he needs to be impeached. I'm absolutely on record in saying that the President of the United States has defined himself. It is not what other people say about him. It's what he has told us about himself, who he is, what he cares about, and how he treats other people. But aside from that, here we are involved in public policy that's been made in the White House without the benefit of talented individuals, informed, educated individuals. He's starting trade wars. He does not know what he's doing. The latest one, of course, with Mexico. And of course, you know what's happening with China. But in all of this, our farmers are really upset. But guess what? While they are cutting money for homelessness and housing in HUD, he found $16 billion to subsidize the farmers. And guess what the farmers said? We don't want a subsidy. We want trade. We could use that $16 billion. I have a $13 billion bill for homelessness. We could use that money to get veterans off the street, get people off the street, get families off the street, get children who are sleeping in their cars every night off the street. And so, enough of all of that. Let me just say thank you, and I always present Dr. Namazika with a certificate of special recognition. And I know he has many of these, but of course when I visit him, I expect all of mine to be on his wall. Certificate of special recognition, because as I said when I first came in, I love you and I'm proud of you for continuing this effort of yours to bring all of the religions together to talk about unity and to talk about peace. But before I go, I got to say something about education. We have a ballot measure that you should be voting on Tuesday. I flew back from San Francisco this morning and I went to early voting at Southwest High School to cast my vote for Proposition E. This is extremely important because guess what? California, our government now, is in very good shape. It's in very good shape, and they have a surplus. And I want to tell you, I don't care which party you support, it's because Democrats are in power. And it's because we have a democratically elected assembly and senate, and we have a governor, and this Governor Newsom is very bold that he cares about education. Education is supposed to be our #1 priority in the state of California. If so, we have to put our money where our mouths are. And so EE is all about strengthening education. It's about reducing the classroom size. We still have classrooms with over 40 students, in the classroom. It's about having nurses at all of our schools. It's about having counseling. It's about really supporting education in ways that will help to educate our young people. And get them ready for a future and careers that can cause them to have a good quality of life and contribute to their communities, to their cities, states, to their government, all of that. So please don't forget to vote. Tuesday is the vote. But you can vote, maybe a little late today. Early voting is extremely important, and I do want everyone to vote. I could not be here earlier today to walk precincts because I was at the Democratic conference in San Francisco. But I want you to know I did not forget. The minute I got off the plane, I went and I voted. Oh, how are you doing? Yes, I'm very good. I'm very good. So they were supposed to have someone here with some literature this evening. Has anyone been?
Oh, there it is.
Oh, he has the literature. Okay, I don't know what you're going to do with it and how you would distribute it, but I would like to ask you if you would please.
We can distribute at the dinner.
At the dinner. All right, thank you very much. And thank you. I think that's all I'm supposed to do is make sure that they know that you're here with the literature. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, Dr. Knopfler, my husband's here. Please announce it.
Can I take this opportunity, because I have to go, but can I just respond real quick? And then you can, because I really have to go.
They
Okay,
say behind every successful man is a woman, but behind this successful one is Ambassador Williams.
I have to go, but since the Congresswoman is here and she made some number of excellent points as usual, I think Dr. Namazika and to our interfaith group, we have an assignment now. We actually have homework. We're not just going to come here and talk and then leave it. We should have a religious forum on the Middle East